It was a beautiful evening. You remember every detail, the contours of her body in the tight dress she was wearing, the way she allowed her hair to dance with the breeze, and the delicious aroma of her perfume. You remember how she smiled timidly every time you got lost into her eyes. You thought it was everything a man could hope for. You spent weeks building chemistry via text messages and phone calls, and finally, she was sitting across from you. Candles on the table, dim lights, music low in the background, conversation flowing into laughter, laughter into closeness, closeness into intimacy. She initiated touching, and you just followed. You asked for permission. She said yes, not once, but clearly, willingly, unequivocally. There was no hesitation. Both of you wanted to be there, and both of you chose to take it deeper. For you, it was romance. For her, it seemed the same, at least that night. But the story did not end there. Days later, her words shifted. What had been her consent in the moment is now being redefined as something else. What was once a memory of tenderness is now being retold as violation. That is the nightmare every innocent man lives with today. The danger of retroactive withdrawal of consent, that is, consent given freely in the moment, but later withdrawn. A yes that becomes a no after the fact. And in a world that preaches, believe all women, the weight of that new story will crush you before you even get the chance to speak. Here is the hard truth. Once she makes that exual assault accusation, it doesn't matter what actually happened. It's not her words against yours, it's just her words. Crocodile tears flood her face as she fabricates her story, each drop becoming the glue that seals your fate. Your reputation burns. Your career is derailed. Your friends pull away. Your family begin to question you. The police show up and you get arrested. And even if you are cleared, the stain lingers. For women, believe all women was meant as a call to take their voices seriously after decades of being ignored. But for men, it has created a climate where innocence offers no shield, where the accusation itself includes both the conviction and the punishment. Legally, the system still says innocent until proven guilty. The burden of proof is supposed to rest with the accuser through the prosecution. In court, the state must show beyond a reasonable doubt that you acted without her consent. But in real life, the courtroom is no longer the only battlefield. In workplaces and universities, the standard is much lower. More likely than not, that's 51%. A coin toss. In the court of public opinion, there is no burden of proof at all. One headline, one post, one whisper is enough. No patience for nuance or doubt. So yes, the law still says you are innocent until proven guilty. But the culture says you are guilty until you prove your innocence. And even then, you may never reclaim your life. We're living in a time where the rules of intimacy have changed dramatically. The Me Too movement brought an important spotlight on predatory behavior, and consent became the headline word of our generation. In principle, this is good. Mutual respect, clarity, and safety in intimacy. No man in his right mind argues against that. But for the innocent man, the rules of consent are not just guidelines, they're landmines. You can get a clear yes in the moment and still wake up to find yourself accused, doubted, and destroyed. Nowhere is this danger more obvious than in the modern principles of consent. Affirmative, ongoing, specific, informed, and voluntary. In theory, they are noble, but for men, they are riddled with traps. Let's look at each of these principles of consent separately. 1. They tell you that consent must be affirmative. Up until recently, intimacy was based on the notion that no means no. This meant that if she says no, you must immediately stop. This was clear enough and quite reasonable. But now, they change it to yes means yes. This now means, unless she explicitly says yes, you do not have her consent. But wait, if you think a simple yes is enough, you're in big trouble. It has to be an enthusiastic yes. What the heck does that even mean? What is an enthusiastic yes? And as a man, how do you measure a woman's enthusiasm unless she is physically taking the lead all throughout the romantic interaction? Thousands of years of history of consensual interactions between men and women have taught us that most women are quiet, hesitant, or shy when it comes to intimacy. Even in modern societies, random polls and surveys conducted on social media consistently indicate that women have a strong preference for men who take initiative in bed. And any sign of hesitation on your part is typically perceived as a lack of experience, which is a big turnoff for most women. Clearly, the people who came up with this enthusiastic yes affirmative principle must think that every woman out there has already been ran through with 3-digit body counts, which makes these women such enthusiastic extroverts. 2. Consent must be ongoing. Let's say there are 8 steps in intimacy: the romantic conversation, physical proximity, gentle sensual touching, kissing, gentle undressing, caressing, the intercourse, and the pillow talk. Within each of these stages, the ongoing consent principle requires you to ask and get a verbal enthusiastic yes from her. They want you to continually check in with her after she verbalized the initial enthusiastic yes, just to make sure that she wants you to keep going. And this doesn't only apply to the first time you guys are getting intimate, it also applies to every subsequent time, even if the two of you now agree to a committed relationship. Consent can be withdrawn at any time, and we all agree with that. But today, positive non-verbal cues are no longer green lights. Body language, soft signals, silence, you can no longer rely on these to keep going, according to the consent police. Even if she is moaning with pleasure, even if she is on top, riding you like a Bugatti, the consent police still want you to stop and ask for permission to continue. If this sounds ridiculous, well, that's because it is. Imagine you are driving a car and you reach an intersection. The light is clearly green by all visible measures, but the consent police want you to stop at the intersection and ask the traffic light, "Are you sure you are green? Should I proceed?" 3. Consent must be specific. Consent is not a blanket agreement for the entire act. Just because she agreed to one thing doesn't mean she agreed to everything. Each step requires its own permission slip, which she must sign enthusiastically. Here's the challenge. Where exactly does one step end and another begin? Is consent for kissing separate from touching? Is consent for touching separate from undressing? How often do you have to pause and ask for verbal permission before it becomes awkward and unnatural? Clearly, this creates a minefield of interpretation for you. Even if you check in regularly, you might miss a boundary she never voiced. And later, her silence or passive participation could be reframed as lack of consent. 4. Consent must be informed. It's very important to understand that alcohol complicates everything. Consent only counts if both you and her are in a position to make a free, informed choice. That means no intoxication, no drugs, no manipulation. If she has been drinking, even the most enthusiastic yes will be invalidated. She is not being held accountable for her consent when she is under the influence of alcohol. However, if you have been drinking, you are still liable for getting an enthusiastic consent. Alcohol is everywhere in modern dating culture. Bars, parties, clubs, even Netflix and chill often involve drinking. But this double standard punishes you no matter what. This is another area where men get hit the hardest. The law around intoxication is a one-way street. If she has been drinking, Her ability to consent will be called into question, even if she is the one who initiated the encounter. But if you have been drinking, you are still fully responsible for your actions. Think about it. Two adults can both be tipsy, both make the choice together, but the man alone bears the risk of an accusation. And what does too drunk to consent even mean? There is no breathalyzer test for desire. Courts and campuses decide after the fact, often based on subjective impressions. For the innocent man, this means any sexual encounter involving alcohol carries serious legal and reputational risks, even if both consented in the moment. 5. Consent must be voluntary. The consent police tell you that consent has to be freely given, without pressure, manipulation, or abuse of power. No threats, no guilt tripping, no imbalance of authority. On the surface, this sounds straightforward. But in practice, the definition of pressure can be incredibly broad. What exactly counts as pressure? If you ask twice after a hesitant response, is that pressure? If you are older, more confident, or in a higher social position, which most women objectively prefer because of their hypergamic nature, can that be called a power imbalance? If she later feels that she only went along to please you, can that be reinterpreted as non-consent? Moreover, what is manipulation? If you told her in the moment that you liked her, but you haven't called her back after a whole week, was that manipulation? The danger here is that a man cannot control a woman's internal narrative. Even if you thought the vibe was mutual, she may later feel she was pressured by your persistence, your confidence, or just the dynamics of attraction. If her feelings shift after the fact, for any reason whatsoever, the burden falls on you to explain why her yes was real and voluntary. If she later frames her choice as compliance instead of consent, you automatically become the villain. These accusations have real-life consequences for the innocent man. Consider this. A college athlete is accused. He is cleared in court, but he gets expelled from school anyway. His scholarship is gone, his career is over. A businessman is accused during a messy breakup. His reputation gets shredded before any evidence is even heard. A young man is falsely accused. He spends months in jail awaiting trial, only to be acquitted. But by then, his name is forever tied to the word rapist. These are not hypotheticals. These are realities that have played out again and again in recent years. And what unites these cases is that the accusation itself is the punishment. Here is the cruel paradox. Legally, the accuser carries the burden of proof. So, on paper, she is expected to bring evidence that she didn't consent. But in practice, you carry that burden. You must show not only that she said yes, but that she meant it, that she continued to mean it at every step, that she meant it soberly, that she meant it voluntarily, that she didn't later regret it. And unless you have objective evidence such as videos, audio, text messages, witnesses, you cannot prove what happened behind closed doors. Your word is not enough. And again, even if you win in court, your life is still ruined. So we arrive at the central dilemma. How can you protect yourself in a system where consent today may not be consent tomorrow? Where yes can become no long after the moment has passed? What safeguards can you put in place to defend against accusations that rewrite history? Because one thing is clear, innocence is not enough. Proof is the only shield. The answers are neither simple nor comfortable. They involve vigilance, discernment, and sacrifice. They require you to think differently about intimacy, to treat every encounter as both personal and legal. You must learn the rules of survival in a world where the burden of proof has shifted from the accuser to the accused, from the system to the individual, from the law to the man. Here are a few safeguards. 1. Polish your character by being consistently disciplined, respectful, and honorable. With a good reputation, false accusations may become harder to believe. 2. Apply discernment when choosing your partners. Do not ignore red flags. If she shows any signs of instability, immaturity, or vindictiveness, run. Because these red flags are not just relationship risks, they are reputational landmines. 3. Dig into her history. Check out her social media catalog. Pictures in underwear are a huge red flag, unless she is standing by the beach. Ask around. If she has a history of promiscuity and playing with men, you're just her next target. The bottom line is, think with your brain, not with your middle leg. On the day of your encounter with her, do not drink any alcohol. But also, try your best to not let her consume any alcohol during the encounter. You should avoid the alcohol trap at all costs. If she's drunk, walk away. The law may void her consent, but it will not void your responsibility. Be smart. For your date, pick a place that does not sell alcohol. When you get there, take a quick look around and locate a table that is near a camera. If possible, you should record the entire interaction on your phone. The next morning, send her a text message saying, "I had fun last night. Judging by how amazing you were, I can tell you had fun too." If she doesn't confirm that she had fun too, continue the text exchange to find out why. Now, even if you follow all these rules and principles, you are still exposed to false accusations. You may have secured an affirmative and enthusiastic consent. You may have checked with her at every stage if it's okay to continue. You may have made sure there was no alcohol involved. You are still not immune from false accusations. You may have done everything right. Your entire future is still at the mercy of her mood fluctuations. And the worst part is that many jurisdictions have eliminated the statute of limitation on grape accusations. This means she can come back any number of years later to falsely accuse you. For the innocent man, this is what we call retroactive withdrawal of consent. If you ever get falsely accused, do not walk into HR or Title IX meetings without an attorney. The system is not neutral. It is protective of the institution. The university you attend, the company that you work for, they will all try to cover their behind because they do not want to get sued for not taking her accusations seriously. Even when there's no substance to her accusations, you will still get suspended. Like in the court system, schools and workplaces will assume that you are guilty until you prove your innocence. And even if you manage to prove your innocence with hard evidence, you will not get an apology. You will not get your life back, and she will not suffer any consequences. As a principle, consent is essential. Nobody disputes that. But the way it's currently enforced creates an uneven playing field. Women are rightly protected, but the innocent man carries a much heavier burden. The hard truth is that you face challenges at every step, getting a clear and enthusiastic yes without ruining the moment, respecting ongoing consent without being punished for feelings that change later, navigating the blurry lines between steps of intimacy, dealing with alcohol and intoxication double standards, avoiding accusations of pressure in situations where attraction itself creates imbalance. And all of this means that for the innocent man, the cost of intimacy is higher than ever. This episode is not an invitation for you to become bitter or aloof. We do not promote, condone, or encourage any kind of resentment against women on this channel. Our goal is not to set men and women against each other in a tug of war. Instead, this is a warning for the innocent man to not letting yourself be guided by the flow of blood in your genitals. You must not drop your guard. Never in the history of the world has intimacy been so cheap. And yet, never in the history of the world could intimacy become so expensive for the innocent man. If you get falsely accused, the legal process itself is already a punishment. But in the court of public opinion, due process doesn't even exist at all. For the innocent man, ongoing consent does not end when the act ends. It stretches into the future, vulnerable to regret, to social pressure, and to cultural narratives that encourage women to re-evaluate their past choices. You may think the moment has passed, but the accusation can come years later. In the public eye, the principle of believe all women means that the accusation itself carries greater weight than evidence. And even if you get acquitted, it doesn't restore what you lost. So the true burden of proof falls squarely on you. You must prove not only that she consented, but that she did so clearly, consistently, specifically, soberly, and voluntarily. And even then, proof may not save you from ruin. The brutal reality today is that consent has become an impossible standard for men to meet without serious risks. The principles of consent are noble, but their application is often hostile to fairness. As a young man, it is no longer enough to watch out for red flags in a woman. You must also look out for yellow flags and be cautious about green flags. Because in the era of #MeToo, even green flags move like a chameleon. Before you know it, they will change color on you. So my final words for you today is to be extremely cautious about the woman you allow into your personal space. I promise you, it is not worth it. Let me say that again. It is not worth it. And that's why you need to protect yourself at all times. This channel focuses on decoding masculinity to help you navigate what it means to be a man today. Together, we are creating a community of men who see reality for what it is, not what they are being sold. Please subscribe, like, and turn on the notifications so that the message can reach more men. Also, you can support our work via the link in the description below.